It was always the belief, and it continues to be the belief of the Global Citizen Circle, that change is only possible when people of differing backgrounds, different opinions, differing races and religions, etc., when they can come together and talk in open and honest dialogue. And that is really what the Dunphy family set about doing 50 years ago here in this hotel. Bringing people together who may never have had a chance to meet one another, to come and sit, break bread, and have conversations that matter. They weren't always easy conversations, but they were civil and open and honest. And 50 years later, we're still at it. Here we are. 50 years later, we still need open and honest dialogue, now even more than ever. And 50 years later, a new generation of change makers are calling us to respond. Exactly a year ago, we hosted two of those young change makers, Arab Aramin and Yigal El-Hanan, both members of the Parent Circle Families Forum. And they are part of that group, sadly, because they lost their sisters in the conflict. Well, they couldn't have known what was to happen 2 weeks later after that Global Citizen Circle program with them. October 7th rocked their world, rocked everybody's world. And these two young men, and these two amazing, courageous, incredible mothers that you're going to hear from today, have continued on with their mission of peace and reconciliation. And I will say too that 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, Global Citizen Circle did a program here in this hotel with the Parent Circle Families Forum and honored the founder of the organization, Yitzhak Frankenthal. And this is the kind of thing that Global Citizen Circle tries to do, to stay with folks. It's not a one and done. Programs aren't just come and have a nice conversation, but let's stay in touch. And that's what we've always worked to do, and I'm happy in a way, and happy's not the right word for it, but to say that we can welcome the Parent Circle Families Forum back to speak with us all at this time of turmoil in their world, in our world. I know that I was changed by the stories of loss and of love and of reconciliation and of hope 20 some odd years ago when I first heard the Parent Circle members speak here. I was really changed, and I was recently reminded of this kind of change that you experience when you hear people like Robbie and Layla. And I just reread a passage from the classic dystopian novel by Octavia Butler. And the passage reads, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change." So it really struck me when I read that, and I knew that I was coming here today to be with this group. And I really felt the need to share that with you, that passage, because it's profound. It speaks to building relationships, which is what the Parent Circle does. It's what Global Citizen Circle does.
Thank you to be here this morning, and really we want to thank you because For me, this is the first time I have a meeting 7:30 in the morning.
And the last.
And we are really so grateful for you that you came to listen to us. Before I start to talk about my personal story, I want to speak about a Palestinian author. His name is Mahmoud Darwish. He said, "The war will end it, and the leaders will shake their hands, but that mother will be waiting for her son, and that woman will be waiting for her husband, and those children will be waiting for their father. I don't know who sold the land, but I know who paid the price. And we are the people who pay the price, and until now we still pay that price." Our organization, maybe it's the most unique organization around the world because it's the only organization that didn't seek for a new member, because to be a new member, that means that you lost one of your loved ones. And this is what we didn't want to happen to anyone. And when the Israelis started to talk about their personal stories, I was really touched and moved because that was the first time I listened to their stories. The first time I felt we shared the same pain, we shared the same tears, even if we had different circumstances, but we're still human. And no one understands that pain unless someone be in the same situation. So from that day, I decided to be a member in the forum and participate in one of the projects to learn much more about the Israeli, because as a Palestinian, I just met soldiers or settlers, but to meet a bereaved mother like Robbie, I didn't have a chance even to do that. So the first active thing, they asked us to talk about something happened during the conflict affect our life. And that was the first time I spoke about my son. Even between me and my husband since his death, we didn't spoke about him. And that was hard even after 16 years. It's like to open the window again, bring the memories back, the pain, the anger, everything. And I started to cry, couldn't complete the story. And there's an Israeli woman came forward and she started to apologize and she said to me, "Yeah, I didn't hurt you, but the people who hurt you from my own people, I'm a mother too, I could understand your pain even if you couldn't say a word." And she came and hugged me. And to be honest, that was the first time I felt someone care about me, someone could understand me really, even if I didn't speak about anything. From that day, I decided to be member and active member in the forum, start to get elections inside Israel, Palestine, travel around the world to spread the message of peace and reconciliation. And I thought everything will be perfect and that's it. But life didn't leave me alone. 2 years ago, we've been in Jerusalem with a meeting with other NGOs, and after we spoke about our personal stories, there's an Israeli man who stand up and he started to talk about his personal story. I know him like 3 years ago, but that was the first time I listened to his story. Then he mentioned that he was a high officer in the army and he served in my area. And then he mentioned that he prevented a Palestinian car which have sick children from going to a hospital. Then I felt like someone slapped me in my face. I didn't know what to do because in my whole life, I didn't think that I will meet one of those soldiers and to be him, my friend, one of those. That was so hard for me even to think about. And at first I didn't really know what to do. Then I started to cry and really cry from my heart. Then Robbie asked both of us to go outside to speak about that. Then he said to me, "I know this is hard for you, but this is so important for me to tell you that part of the story." And then he mentioned after that his son became sick, and when he tried to take him to a hospital, the guard stopped him because he wanted to ask him a few questions and he was in a hurry. And then he said, "Then just I understand what I did to the Palestinian. He quit from the army, he refused to serve again, he jailed because of that, and after that he established a new organization called Compassion for Peace with ex-Palestinian fighters to end the occupation, to end the conflict, and to work so hard to the ground to help people even." I looked to him and I said, "Look, Khin, this is so hard for me to listen to you. But at the same time, I want to thank you, Kil, because if that part of your story was there and you hide it, I will never forgive you. But because you have that courage and that honesty to speak in front of me, I could forgive you. Then I realized this is the real reconciliation. It's easy to speak about peace and love and reconciliation, but sometimes we ask ourselves if we meant every word we say, if we meant everything we did. And that day I realized that I really meant everything I did and everything I said. And even that gave me power and the courage to continue even in these hard times after the 7th of October. Everyone understand and realize what happened in Israel and Gaza. But unfortunately, no one understands what's happened in the West Bank. Since the 7th of October until today, we're still under closure. All the people who work inside Israel, they lost their job. The economic situation become much harder and harder every day. And the settlers didn't leave us alone. Every day they attack the Palestinian village. They burn their houses, they burn the cars, they even throw stones against them at the street. And the hardest thing that even the Israeli soldiers encourage them and they protect them. And imagine the life of the Palestinian, how it could be, because most of the village is surrounded with settlement, and they have this kind of attack daily. But we still believe this will end one day. We didn't know when, we didn't know how, but we can't stop because of our children, because of our grandchildren, and because we believe that every soul is so precious, and God created us to love and to live, not to kill each other. Thank you so much.
In so many ways. Who would have imagined I'd arrive in Boston and a whole bunch of people would get up at the crack of dawn and come to a breakfast. But really what I'm thinking about is the gratitude of being able to be part of change in somebody's life. So I'll tell you a little story about transformation. There is a woman, I went to a village in the West Bank called Beit Umar. And it was a whole women's meeting and I was the only Israeli there. And I went inside and we started to talk. Some of them came from the parent circle. And a woman walked in, completely dressed in black. Of course, I don't know, I keep telling her she shouldn't wear black and who's now. And she looked at me and she saw that I was Israeli and she wanted to leave immediately. And so I caught her at the door and I said, please come and tell me. She had around her neck a necklace with a picture of her son. So it was very clear to me that she was a bereaved mother. I asked her, please come and tell me who you lost and what happened. And she looked at me and she came and sat, but she sat with her back to me like this. And slowly, slowly I asked her more and more questions about who she had lost and what had happened and how old was he and what did he look like. And she told me everything. And then I asked her, would you like to see a picture of David, my son, who was killed by a Palestinian sniper? And she very reluctantly said, okay. And she turned towards me and I showed her the picture and she said, haram, which means, what a pity. And that was like a whole change in her. She suddenly recognized the shared pain. Today, she's one of the most active women in the parent circle. She traveled with me, something like Laila, but she didn't speak English. And the first trip she took out of this village was to New York, where we spoke in Lincoln Center. Can you imagine? She told her story. And I took her to Central Park and I got her addicted to hamburgers and like this extraordinary transformation. So there's a gratitude in being a part of something like that. My own story, you know, I've told it so many times and I keep thinking about all the children in Gaza and in Israel who have died. and nobody will ever tell their story. And I think about the soldiers. Every morning the army announces soldiers that died, and I see these little squares of faces, and I know what's waiting for the mothers. And so a part of the work that we have to be doing is to bring solace, because I remember when David was killed, the people who were most valuable in my life were other bereaved mothers, because they actually understood. I hope that none of you will ever understand what that is.
The day that my son died, I have a dream. There's a white dove came and stand on my shoulder and say to me, "Mama, don't cry, I'm so happy." I know that he's happy because he's just 6 months old. But at that time I didn't understand why he came as a white dove. But when I become a member in the forum, I understand that it's the symbol for peace. And it was kind of message from God to tell me this is your new mission. And that he didn't want the death of my son went without achieving something. And if the death of my son happened to protect other families, other children from being in the same situation, I will be satisfied. And even that gave me hope every day to continue because of him and because I want to protect my children. I'm not ready to lose another one. And not just my children, any child in Israel, Palestine, all of them are my children. And I understand how much this will be so hard for any women or any parents. And even for their other brothers or sisters, sometimes we thought as mothers that we are the only one who suffered after we lost our children. But I realized that was totally wrong. When we sometimes didn't talk to our children, it's kind of protect them. But they even suffered because of that, and they are afraid to ask a question when they saw that the mother didn't spoke about that. But I realized that I should speak to them, and every day when I look to their eyes, whatever happened, I say I should do, and I should complete this because of them. And I don't want them one day to say they didn't do anything, they just sit side and just watch everything. I will never wait the leaders to do something. Sorry for all the men in this room, but we said men bring war and women bring peace. So because of that, that's what gives me hope every day. Thank you.
I think we have to do something. And that's actually the reason we're here. Because so many, after October the 7th, we had hundreds and hundreds of people turning to us to ask us to do something. And the World Bank, I'm asking you, if the World Bank has asked Robbie Damlin and a Palestinian partner to come and talk because their staff are not talking to each other, that is pretty pathetic. And fortunately, we were in Washington, and in Washington is Georgetown University, who have been our mentors for many, many years. And we spent some time at Georgetown, and we asked the president if he could help us to create an education program online, which we've done. And it's an extraordinary program. It has 3 dialogue meetings, as if you were sitting in the room. It has a question and answer and a wonderful manual that was also created by them. I don't care if you want to boycott, as long as you take all that money that you're taking away and you'll invest it in peace. Whatever you're doing, invest it back into peace. That's the only thing I can see that will be of any help. And it's so difficult now, because what if we didn't have the Iron Dome? You know, it's so, I can't pretend that I don't love Israel. I can't pretend that there has to be a state for the Jewish people. Who will take 1 million Jews from Russia? Who will take all the Ethiopian Jews? Our history proves what we are destined to be. Who knows? We keep being thrown out of everywhere, okay? You know how much anti-Semitism there is now. This is a great excuse for it to come out from under the rocks. We must protect it, but that is not at the expense of the Palestinian people. I want to live in a moral country. I want to live in a moral country. But it means that we have to change. And that occupation has to end. Support that. Support people who will invest. Tell the students to support all the organizations, not only with money. Talk about us. Go and make peace with your own people. God knows there's enough polarization here to finish off the world.
What is the word for a parent that loses their child? I only know the English language. I don't know Hebrew, I don't know Arabic. But there is no word in the English language for that. And the reason why there's no word is because it's not supposed to happen. And so today we stand in unity and solidarity with the parent circle. I want to give props to Leor and Shiri for the amazing work that you continue to do. I also want to acknowledge one of my sheroes, Colette Phillips, who has paved the way for so many folks who look like me in the city of Boston. And I think it is notable that we are 50 years from desegregation. And I think it's also notable as a history major that we acknowledge that Martin Luther King died on April 4th, 1968. And if we do the math, we were desegregating schools in 1974 and 1975 in the city of Boston. And this hotel and this family of the Dunphys participated in something that's come back around, which is radical, civil, courageous dialogue that says we're gonna sit with folk who we had a tough time with, and we're gonna not turn our back on them, but we're gonna turn to them in the most difficult times. And we're gonna figure things out. And when I look, and I got to go to Israel in 2015, and when I see both of you sisters, I see beauty. And I see so much that we need to learn, especially in the United States, especially right now, about the ability to understand that we are inextricably connected. Our destinies are tied with one another. And for 50 years, this organization, the Global Citizen Circle, has held this platform. We have advisors, we have folks from the board of directors who are in this room. And I challenge each of you to make sure that there's another 50 years.